This is Columbus Concerns, a public affairs presentation of North American Broadcasting. Here's your host, Mark Neuse.
And good morning, and thanks for joining us today on Columbus Concerns. Our guest today from St. Francis de Sales High School, the lacrosse coach, is Matt Triplett, and he is here to talk about something that is at the General Assembly level right now. It's called House Bill 492, and Matt, thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
What is House Bill 492?
House Bill 492 is a requirement that coaches are certified and trained in mental health training as a part of their pupil activity permit. On a biannual, every 3 years, every coach needs to get certified in CPR, first aid, concussion training, as well as sudden cardiac arrest. This would add another component to that where coaches would be trained in mental health training.
Now, you've been one of the proponents of this bill. Tell me why.
One of the bigger components, I was also kind of the genesis of it. So there was a point where there was a student up in the Cleveland area. He took his own life, and I had noticed as the pandemic was going on that more and more students were committing suicide, but nothing was really being done about it. So there was always people saying on social media, "Why isn't somebody doing something about it? What's not being done?" So it just got to the point where I was like, you know what, this needs to be training, mandatory training for coaches, and as part of the activity process. And so, long story short, what had happened was a former coach by the name of Patrick Donlin, he had sent me a DM on Twitter. And he's kind of in the political world and has connections in there. And he said, "Hey, if you really want to go through with this, I can help you out." So he got me in touch with Eric Waddell over at Capital Partners, and we were able to go ahead and get the language that we wanted to be included within the bill. And then they were able to find a representative in Mike Loychek and Gail Pavliga to get a co-sponsorship, put it in legislative language. They dropped it in the House on November 16th, and it's been there ever since.
And why coaches? What is special about a coach-player relationship where they might be able to help?
Sure. So coaches are seen as trusted advisors for the kids. If you're out of season, a lot of times if a kid is running in trouble or having issues within school, family, things like that, a lot of times I'll get phone calls from my own players. But then when we're in season, we have access to the kids every single day. And it's a little bit more of a close relationship than sometimes teachers can have because, we joke around with the kids, we go through hard drills, we go through a lot of things. But then at the end of the day or the end of the week, there's also those life lessons that are being taught through competition. You win a game, you lose a game, something happens. And, and those are the moments where you build trust with those kids. And so since we have access to those kids in a non-institutional setting, where we're able to see them behave around their friends, coaches can tune into, okay, something's off with Johnny over here, something's not right, or, something's happening over here. I can tell, his performance is not great, the way he's interacting is not great. So we can see a lot of those red flags.
Our guest today on the program is Matt Triplett. He is the lacrosse coach at DeSales High School here in Columbus, and he is here to talk about House Bill 492, which would get some mental health training for coaches to look for problems with their players and the students at these high schools. And Matt, have you seen a change in the kids since the pandemic? That's what we keep hearing about, how kids, it really changed the way they look at the world and the way things work with them. And have you seen that change?
I have. The biggest change that I've seen is a lot of anxiety amongst them, whether it be social anxiety, whether it be dealing with schoolwork, and managing all of their time across sports, social life, academics. That's really the biggest thing. I have seen depression kind of go up. But one of the things that I had done with some of my players is I went through and I asked them, "Hey, are you guys happy? What's making you happy? What's not making you happy? And what would make you happy?" And for the most part, they're kind of like, "Yeah, I am," but there was always a but. And it was always something, it was the stresses of getting ready for college. It was the stresses of getting ready for competition. It was the time commitments that they make in every aspect of their life. So the overall anxiety of everything, I think, is the biggest thing that I've noticed.
And one thing that, at least old guys like me didn't have to deal with social media pressures.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that I've seen with the social media is, back when I'm just like you. When we were back in school, if we made a mistake in a game, it was on some dad's VHS recorder, and and maybe made it to their highlight film. But now with social media, things like Periscope, live streaming, all these different things, if a kid messes up in a game and it's just a boneheaded move or whatever it might be, the entire world can both see it and comment on it, and that kid's going to be. He's going to be seeing those comments, and there's parents who broadcast those things, tweet things out, put things on Instagram and whatnot, and those kids are bearing the brunt of all of those things that are coming out.
And then you put on top of that the social pressures from social media and the dating and then the academics, and you can have a pretty bad combination there.
Absolutely. And I make the comment to my coaches all the time where, back in the day when we were in school, we had flip phones and everything, if we had phones, where if we had a bad day, we could go home, just shut the door, turn off the lights, watch TV, and get away from everything. The world has access to these kids, and these kids have access to the world 24/7. Yeah. I mean, the first thing, I don't know about you, one of the first things I do when I wake up is pull the phone out, check the emails, and they're doing the exact same thing with Twitter. And if something goes viral overnight, they're waking up to a couple thousand comments.
Matt Triplett is here. He is the lacrosse coach at DeSales High School, talking about House Bill 492, which would get some mental health training for coaches here in the state. About how many coaches are we talking about? All sports in is it just high school, or is it also middle school and elementary?
It would the focus would be on all of high school. So across the state, we're looking anywhere between 65 to 80,000 coaches, depending on the year.
That's a lot of eyes and ears helping out.
It is. And one of the comments that I generally hear is, well, a lot of coaches just like to hit play on a recording or whatever and take the training. And my response is always, you know what? But if 50% of coaches listen, now you've got 35 to 40,000 coaches that now understand more than they did.
Talk a little bit about the training itself and what would be involved.
Sure. So the legislation actually defaults to the curriculum for the curriculum to be determined by the Ohio Department of Mental Health. Mm-hmm. And so the curriculum that we're looking for is, number one, is going to be suicide prevention. And the biggest question that a lot of people have about it is, I'm a coach. I don't want to be a therapist. I don't want the liability associated with that.
Right.
And the intent behind the bill and what it's really doing, it's not training coaches to be therapists, but just like an athletic trainer or my first aid training, for example. I can tell typically if a kid has a compound fracture in his arm or he's done something to his knee, and from there I know who to call. Do I go ahead and call mom and dad, say, you know what, ice it tonight and let's see the trainer tomorrow? Maybe he needs to go ahead and go to urgent care, or this is a squad call right now. I need to call the squad. And so really the training is to say, okay, is it a conversation do I need to have with the parents? Should I go ahead and refer them to the guidance counselor, or should I go ahead and call 911 and get a CIT officer involved for a possible suicide?
And what responsibilities does this put on the shoulders of a coach?
Really, the responsibilities that it puts on a coach is that it number one, it helps coaches cue into what exactly that they're going to be doing or watching for the coaches or for the players. A great example is, I've had a kid. Where in the past where he's said, Coach, I've got stomach issues, and so he's missed a couple days per week because he's always getting food poisoning and all the other things. And one of the comments I made to my coach is, I'm like, well, we need to keep an eye on him. And he's sitting there kind of like, well, why? He's just, kid has bad luck. Well, it also could be anxiety that he's feeling, and that's a way to get out of things.
Right.
So it's little cues like that where it'll help us kind of tune into things. And, what I'll do is if I think a kid might have anxiety issues, call mom and dad, say, hey, you know what, you might want to take a look at this, or get the school counselor involved. Say, hey, keep an eye on Johnny, because these are some of the things that I've noticed. Maybe you can notice these traits too.
Where does House Bill 492 stand right now?
Sure. So currently, it was introduced in the House, and it's in the Higher Education Committee. And so right now we're working with the committee members and the committee chair, Representative Manning, to try to get a hearing scheduled and hopefully get sponsor testimony and proponent testimony.
Now, I assume if someone is hearing this and they like what they hear, a good thing to do would be contact their representative and tell them they support it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think people really understand how much difference that really makes. Hearing from their constituents that people are in favor of something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened in other states? Is this something new to Ohio, or are there also already programs like this in other states?
Sure. So there are other programs similar like this in other states. Going into this, I did a lot of research into crafting this and getting this moving. Ohio would actually be the first state in the entire country that would have legislation actually passed. Now, the state of Michigan, for example, they go ahead and they've partnered with other mental health providers where they're saying, hey, this is the preferred provider of the MHSAA. Whereas Colorado, they went ahead and they have mandatory training as part of their coaches certification process. But the Colorado High School Athletic Association, all of their coaches certification are through the CHSAA, not through the state. Like Ohio, we are through the ODE, where in order to go ahead and affect change, everything needs to go through legislation or through the ODE.
And then once, if a coach under this bill would recognize a problem,
Mm-hmm.
Are there then procedures? Are there resources available for him to get this child the help they need?
Absolutely. Now, there are thousands of resources that are available that people don't know about. That's the biggest thing. And this training would help coaches understand, okay, my guidance counselor, for example, is a resource. It's not just about getting kids into college. I had linked up a week ago with a high school student down in Cincinnati. There is a new national number. Instead of dialing like 911 like you would for an emergency, it would be 988, which link you directly to the National Suicide Hotline. Now, I've been working on this bill for over a year. I had no clue 988 even existed until I linked up with this kid, Jake Hertzman, and he in his initiative that he's been working on. So it just brings a lot of these resources that are already there. It brings them to light, and coaches understand how to access them and how to use them.
Now, this has been an odyssey for you so far, after you got involved in this, sort of learning the legislative process
Mm-hmm.
and how things work. What are your fellow coaches saying about this?
The ones that know me well, right off the bat, they're like, "This is great. This is a great idea." A few years ago, I organized a coaches training for lacrosse coaches in Central Ohio to be trained in mental health first aid. But then there's obviously hesitancy with other coaches across other sports who don't know me. And so the coaches that I've been able to speak with, I've spoken with, I can't even know how many coaches in other sports will they'll DM me or we'll talk on the phone and they say, "Coach, what is this about? I like the premise, but I have, some concerns about it." And so typically it's three concerns. It's one, how is it funded? Is it an unfunded mandate? Two, where's the liability in it? And then three, I don't want to be a therapist.
Yeah.
And after I speak with them, I've had 100% of coaches not support the bill. Every single coach after I've gotten off the phone with them has supported the bill.
How often do you have to be certified? How often do you have to take classes to remain a certified coach?
Sure. So it can vary. So typically, I believe like CPR, for example, is every 3 years. I think first aid is every 2 years. Concussion is every 2 years. And this would add a biannual component. There's actually an initiative right now where we're looking to work with OSU Life Sports is working with the Susan Crown Exchange to go ahead and streamline things. So instead of everything, 2 years here, 2 years here, 3 years here, a year here, to kind of streamline everything and make it okay. It's every 2 years or every 3 years to standardize the certification process.
Does the bill have bipartisan support?
Right now, it is the sponsor and the co-sponsor. They're both Republican. Mm-hmm. But however, the representatives that I've spoken with and other people that that are helping me in the background that we've spoken with, they do like the bill.
Yeah, that's good. Matt Triplett is here. He is the lacrosse coach at St. Francis de Sales High School, and he is talking about House Bill 492. And what that would do is that would require that coaches in the state for the high school level get some training to recognize mental health problems among their students. You talked about one tragic episode. I assume that's not an isolated thing. You're hearing about this happening across the state.
Across the state and across the country. I mean, look at the Stanford soccer player. She just committed suicide a week ago, and it just hit the news waves. And not necessarily just across the country, but there's always a trend, and I was talking about this last week when I was meeting with legislators, is every time that there is a suicide, within a month to month and a half, whatever organization, athletic department, or school that they're with, there's always some sort of social media campaign or something that's put out there that says, "Hey, we're trained now. We're good to go. We're ready for another episode if it were to happen." Well, the premise of this bill is to get out in front of that, to train coaches, to prevent having to get trained retroactively.
Yeah, and it seems like there's also, after everything like this happened, somebody somewhere saw some clues and didn't talk about it or was afraid to talk about it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. There's always clues that are there, just like you said, where you don't see them in hindsight. But especially in amongst athletes, athletes, they have a lot of pressures that are on them. They have a lot of anxieties that are on them, and especially with both male and female athletes, they have a lot of eating disorders and things like that. So training of this kind of this sort will also help coaches understand that if you have like a female diver, for example, and you have a male coach. And, I'm using gender stereotypes, but, if you have a female diver and a male coach and the male coach comes and says, "Hey, you know what, your fitness level, you might, maybe if you lose 5 to 10 pounds, that could help out your swimming or whatever it might be."
Yeah.
And the same thing would be with wrestling. Wrestling is a very weight conscious sport, obviously, but when you're dealing with something, maybe there's a different way to phrase that. There's a different way to approach that or to understand the signs. Maybe this is not a great conversation to have with, Sarah or whoever it might be.
And I think sometimes people look at athletes and they think, well, they're successful and they're the what problems do they have?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. There was a great documentary that was just on HBO, and it was called The Weight of Gold. And it goes through and it talks with Michael Phelps, and it talks with Lolo Jones and a lot of other athletes at the highest levels, and the depression and anxieties and the things that they feel. And so it's kind of one of those things, especially amongst athletes, where they train so hard for certain moments. And then what happens if they've trained for their entire high school career, and then something happens? Maybe they have a learning disability. Now they're ineligible, and so 4 years are down the drain. Or something happens where they train for so hard, tear an ACL, or they train so hard and they're not able to make states or move on. So they put so much capital and so much effort and so much work into one event or one sport. And if something doesn't pan out or it doesn't go the way that it's quote unquote supposed to, there's a lot of issues that can happen through there as well.
Well, Matt, we're just about out of time. If somebody would like to have more information about House Bill 492, how can they get that?
Sure. So there is a foundation that I've been working with. It is a mother whose sons had depression and had suicidal tendencies. It is called the Complete Athlete Foundation. It's the CompleteAthleteFoundation.com. And what they do is on the actual website, it has links to the bill, has links to be able to find your rep, so you can type in your address and it'll find your legislator, so you can make contact with them. It has templates for letters, so you can go and copy and paste for emails. It has the text of the legislation. Everything is in there. It's a lacrosse mother, and I coached her son through club and whatnot, and so this is really near and dear to her heart. And so she's dedicated the first year and a half of creating this foundation to supporting HB 492 and getting coaches trained in mental health.
Our guest on the show today has been the DeSales lacrosse coach, Matt Triplett. Matt, thanks for stopping by and for all your work, and good luck.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Columbus Concerns, a public affairs presentation of North American Broadcasting. You can send questions or comments about today's show to Columbus Concerns in care of this station, 1458 Dublin Road, Columbus 43215. Or email us at columbusconcerns@napcomedia.com.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute? When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can. But it's just as important to take time for yourself. AARP can help. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.